I named Shorty Shorty because it's pretty short. I didn't get out and pace Shorty off. That was actually the first time I ever landed it, but I would be willing to bet that it's not over 120 feet long. The water's just gotten low enough to where I felt comfortable, with a safety margin to land it. You're landing downriver, so you can use the water, but you can't use it to the full effect that you can use it landing upstream. And this one you can't land upstream because it's in a tight turn. It drops off substantially on the one end, so right here I'm trepidatiously turning the airplane around and picking the tail up as I turn, and then I just accelerate and fly off the end of it. Basically, I'm flying by the time I get to the water. Unless you have a headwind, the water would be the only way to really land Shorty in a safe manner, because if you had to touch down right on the end in the gravel, you would probably run out of gravel bar before you got stopped. And then I'd spotted Lonnie over on this other gravel bar. He had actually saw a spot here that he could land and was clearing out a bunch of driftwood and really big rock that was in the way. And so I just came over and used the water and basically stayed pretty much in the water. So this one, big bar here, I got myself set up pretty far out to actually use the water to its maximum efficiency. And I penetrated the water right at the end. That's what caused the water to fly over the top of the airplane. There's enough drag and resistance there that the momentum of your airplane can force your tail into the air, and then at that point you could either go up on your nose and ding your prop, or you could actually go completely over if you were slow enough and had enough forward momentum that you couldn't keep the tail down. And by giving a little blast, a little shot of power right at the end as your wheels are penetrating, you can actually force your tail down. The squeaking you hear is the brake pads when they get wet. The braking efficiency suffers some, but you still have more than adequate braking, even when you hear them squealing. Lonnie's running 31-inch bush wheels with a 6-inch wheel and a 6-inch brake disc. And I'm running experimental 35-inch bush wheel with my custom billet 10-inch wheel that uses a 6-inch brake disc. And then I'm using my custom organic brake pads. would say that I fly with someone else probably 75 to 85% of the time. The other 15-20% of the time that I'm flying alone, I definitely tell someone where I'm going. I don't really change the way I fly. I may not land a place that is new, that I haven't had a chance to either check out from the ground really well or at least feel super confident about. Paradise, there's usually a pretty good push upriver by about 10:30 in the morning. If you're going to land Paradise, most of the time it's fairly comfortable to do between daylight when we get up there and say 9:30 in the morning. As it gets closer to summer, that changes. So it may be, only doable by say 8 a.m. There's mornings that the air feels really solid, and there's mornings that the air doesn't, and you can feel it, especially if you're landing in places that are 200-300 feet long, and 1 to 3 miles an hour makes it feel like you're going really fast. I have my airplane slowed up when I'm touching down to the point where it really isn't going to fly again when I get bounced into the air. It may float slightly, but it's not going to bounce up and float 100 feet. It's going to bounce up and make contact with the ground fairly quickly because I've just slowed it up so much that it's not really flying anymore. I basically fly it on, and then I'm on my brakes, and I control the height of my tail by the amount of brake pressure I'm using. So if my tail's coming up, I release a little bit of brake pressure. If my tail's not where I want it, I add more brake pressure. When you're landing upriver, you can use more water and less gravel or less beach because you have the flow of the water, which is actually ground speed. And landing on water is ground speed, not air speed. So you got to get out of the mindset of thinking about how fast you're flying as opposed to how fast you're covering the ground. Because your tires only hydroplane down to, say, 28, 29 miles an hour. Below that, then they start to penetrate the water. So you don't want to be penetrating the water 100 yards out because you're going to be in trouble. Here I was having a hard time actually correcting to get on that gravel bar. You can see me power sliding pretty hard to actually catch the gravel bar. Notch is another challenging one. It's in a fairly tight turn. There's a pretty good lip at the beginning, and there's a bunch of logs and stuff that you got to pass in between. And you don't realize how close I'm passing to some of these logs that are on these gravel bars, but you know, sometimes my wing may only be a foot and a half off these big trees that are on it. For me, my best water landings are done when I've got a long approach into it, because I can get my tires down on the water, get myself set up properly, and then get the airplane slowed up to where I actually feel what the airplane's doing on the water. If you have to rush your water landing, you don't get the true feeling of what the airplane's doing because you just don't have time to transition. You can use water downriver or upriver to shorten your actual ground roll. The safest bet is to use water going upriver. My gear gives me an angle of attack that's close to a Super Cub, not quite as much, but it allows me to rotate at a fairly low airspeed and climb. The stock length Maule gear, you just don't have the angle of attack to get the airplane off the ground. With a big 35-inch tires and the 4-inch extended gear, a 100-foot takeoff is possible in this airplane with me in half fuel. Narrating this video was not something I really wanted to do, but I felt like it needed some voice put to the action scene, and I have a lot of fun flying this airplane and landing in these, I don't know if you want to call them crazy places, but this is something that I've been doing not for just a year, not for just 2 years, but quite a few years to gain the experience level that I'm at. So it's not something that you just go out and all of a sudden you're landing in freaky places. It's something that you have to work up to. So fly safe and don't do anything that your mind's telling you you shouldn't be doing.